Welcome back to the Onebar and Lupagus show. I am Lupagus, here with Onebar. I haven't had my coffee, I haven't showered, and I am barely awake.
Wow, no coffee or anything yet?
It's early.
That's insane. That's silly talk.
I know. Well, today in this episode, we're going to talk about 3 Minnesota Vikings from the 2019 class. We expected quite a bit more out of in 2020, and we just didn't get it.
Yeah, they broke our hearts. And you know what? They're going to be around for year 3. Maybe we'll get it out of them then.
Maybe we finally will, but let's start with a guy we didn't get a sniff of at all, and that's Oli Udoh. He showed up the last game of 2019, played pretty damn well, played aggressive. He was mean, stomping on people. I think he did an old butt ball on a Bears defender. I loved what I saw from him, and I thought, holy shit, there's our guard next year.
Yeah, I think Oli Udoh is a very tough one to wrap your brain around because it might just be this imaginary player that we think he might be, and realistically, he's just a 7th round pick that might never play. So I think his big size, the intrigue around him, sets him up to let us down, if that makes any sense.
Well, there's a couple things too. On top of that is that performance I mentioned, and the fact the Vikings guards, because there was talk he was in Odegaard, are so bad. We figured, okay, he's going to have a shot. He's going to have him be in the mix. And like we said earlier in the season, maybe he was only looked at as a tackle, and that's why he never got a sniff. I mean, he was only active, 1 game, maybe 2. So
didn't get out there.
Just it'd be interesting to see if he makes the team next year. Who knows with Udoh?
Yeah, it's with an offensive line this shoddy and not getting a sniff even at guard or anything. I mean, yes, he's a tackle, but they're playing around with him and he still couldn't get out there. So yeah, I think it's very fair to say that he might not even make the team next year. And Oli Udoh fans around the world will be
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them too. All right, next guy on this list is I'm gonna let you start with, but he's my boy, defensive tackle Armon Watts.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Watts was out there. I don't have, you got his stats up. He was out there quite a bit last year for the fact that he was a 6th round pick. So coming into this year, defensive tackle, just like Oli Udoh on the offensive line, you just expected that he would be out there. They would give him this great chance. And yes, he was out there more, but he really, just like the rest of our defensive tackles, did jack shit.
Well, you know, he actually had 31 tackles on the season, half a sack, played in all 16 games. This is where I thought we would have seen from Watts this year. I thought he would have surpassed Shamar Stephen as a starter by midseason. That's what I was expecting. Stephen just blows. Getting pushed around. Watts would come in there, maybe do a little bit here and there, but I really thought we'd see him. You know, he played like 7 games last year, had 1.5 sacks and 13 tackles. So the numbers don't exactly correlate to him playing a full season, but yeah, a guy I really thought could potentially step up. And I know my expectations for Watts were a lot higher than some people's, but I really thought he maybe would see some starts this year.
Yeah, that's the most disappointing part. He had 0 starts this year with a group of defensive tackles that were below average. Through his 2 years, he has 0 tackles for a loss. I mean, come on. I mean, very, very disheartening.
It is, but unlike Udoh, at least he's showing signs of progress. He's starting down here, and maybe he got up to here. So maybe next year he can get a little bit higher up that ladder of talent. But yeah, it is discouraging that he could not supplant those 2 turds in the middle of the Vikings D line. But some of it might go back to this is the Vikings coaching staff, their unwillingness to make changes.
Yeah, and I mean, and we have to be realistic about this. These first 2 guys we're talking about are late round picks. Mm-hmm. So it's more the position they play, more of the lack of depth, and the fact that they still couldn't get out there. And whether that's the coach just being stubborn or whether it's the fact that they're just not very good, we will find out.
We will find out. And the last guy on this list who said there'd be 3, this one is actually probably the most surprising is BC Johnson.
Yeah, BC Johnson disappeared this year. I mean, in training camp, everything. Oh, he's a number 2. He's a number 2 receiver. We all knew that probably wasn't going to last with Justin Jefferson, but he was up there. And for him to go from his rookie year, he had 31 receptions, 6 games started, to this year he started 3 games and he had a measly 14 receptions. Was very surprising. I think coming in this year, I think worst case we're like, hey, he's going to be a solid number 3. We don't think he's going to be a 2, but we finally got our 3, and he was buried. He was behind Chad Beebe pretty much the whole year.
Yeah, he was the kind of the forgotten man of the Vikings receiving corps early in the season. Cousins locked on to Jefferson, and Thielen just kept feeding them to the ball. Later in the year, he kind of preferred Beebe, Irv Smith, Tyler Conklin when he wasn't looking at his 2 horses. So, yeah, after this, preseason that we heard about how great he was, how he's going to have this, beat out Justin Jefferson for the second wide receiver spot. Expectations were through the roof off that rookie season he had where he really came out of nowhere. He had 3 touchdowns last year. Didn't get a sniff this year. He had a couple drops early in the season. I think he had a couple late too. So kind of uncharacteristic for BC Johnson. I definitely still think he's in the mix for next year. It just depends who the Vikings bring in and how, if they end up using a draft pick fairly high on receiver or not. But BC should still be safe for one of the 5 receiving spots on this team in 2021, I would think.
Yeah, you'd think so. And his whole season was pretty much wrapped up in that Carolina game where he had 7 catches for 74 yards. Aside from that, he had a couple catches sprinkled in throughout the year, but I think he comes back next year. I think he's battling for the 4th, 5th receiver. And again, 7th round guy. That's not too shabby.
You just made a word I want to start using.
Was it sprinkled? Or no, what was it?
Catchels.
Catchels. Yeah, he had some good catchels this year.
If you do penis catchels, you can strengthen your urethra.
I was just trying to think of a good one for that, and you beat me to the punch.
I already gave my fact away, but that was not my fact.
Yeah, BC Johnson. Maybe the coaches, and the rumblings out of training camp again gave us high hopes that just were never reachable.
Well, another thing too, I mean, there was really no injuries to the top receivers. Jefferson was healthy, Thielen was healthy, and that's who Cousins wanted to get the ball to, and it made sense. So that didn't help him out either.
His early drops probably maybe put him in the doghouse a little bit because he was having a tough time even seeing the field at times. So he was out there for 16 games. It's not like he was inactive or anything. They just didn't want to play catch with him.
Yeah, I think we both can agree. We expected more than 16 catchels from BC Johnson in 2020.
Catchels. Yeah, and we could let's do a quick couple honorable mentions as far as second-year guys that we could have seen a little bit more out of. Drew Samia, that dream is dead. Dead.
We saw too
and
much.
Austin Cutting. All you had to do was have some good snaps. He only lasted 9 games, and our long snapper is even gonzo.
Yeah. So the 2019 draft is starting to look a little turdish, starting to smell a little bit, but
starting to stink.
That could just be grandma in the kitchen ripping ass. Find out. All right, that's it. Those are the 3 plus 2 bonus 2019, or let's just say second-year Vikings that did not step up the way we expected to in 2020. So that's something you learned today. And here's one other thing you can learn. Viagra has been shown to revive drooping flowers and make them stand up straight.